Might be live. Let's just check. No, not live. Yes, live. Okay. Let's go to YouTube as well. Open up the chat rooms. And then let's get to work. All right. So here we are on chess.com. I'm going to go to my stats, I guess. So one of the things that I'm going to do basically I want to go to my games actually. No, that doesn't show them in an easy order. Search games. Advanced. Okay. No, that doesn't quite show it. So basically, here's what I want to do. To try and get better at Blitz, I'm going to create a little bit of an opening repertoire, something I've basically not even done for normal chess. But yeah, I'm just going to try and work on the openings a tiny bit. So you thought I was going to play mindless Blitz. That's not how I'm going to try to get to 2600. Okay, let's go to stats. I'm pretty sure there's a way to see like what openings you've done badly in. Blitz. Let's do 1 year. Where's the insight thing? Hey, Sophisticated. Mindless Blitz would be good too. I know, Ranja. I know. And we'll be watching Super GM Classical Chess in just like 20 or 30 minutes, you know. So where do I get... insights. I think it's insights, right? Type all. Rated, unrated, Blitz. Date range. All right. We want the last 1 year, not all time. Okay, so we're going to pick out one opening in which I'm scoring the worst with white. Just go to openings. Okay, Queen's Gambit. Okay, Sicilian Defense. I'm not going to play into. I'm going to play E4. Queen's Pawn opening looks good. Grunfeld Defense, fine. Benoni, fine. I played the London system 3 times, apparently. Didn't do well. Queen's Indian Defense, I did fine. Okay, so let's go to the King's Indian. That's a very bad score. And let's see what happened. Okay. Well, the 3 games in 2025, I did win. And then in 2024, I lost 3 games. Let's just have a look. Just play through them, see if we can't improve. A very strong game was decided in the end game. Okay. Oh yeah, I just crushed this game and then blundered later, right? This position was perfectly good. But this was quite a bit of counterplay here, and I didn't know what to do about it, if I recall correctly. That c5 move was clever, and here I should be crushing, and then I let this a pawn come all the way down. The opening seemed okay. Right, well, let's compare it with some computer analysis. Okay, so here nothing's wrong yet. That's right, Obliviax. Yeah, that's this exact line here. So I'm just going to computer check if I did anything wrong this game. It's not showing me enough lines. Hang on. Number of lines. Okay. Oh, there's the lines. Okay. Okay, wait. So we got H3, analysis. After E5, I know that D5 is the right move. That much I know. Knight H5 seems like an unusual move where I wasn't sure what to do. And my Bishop G5 move is probably not best. Let's go over here, make a game. New game, starting position. It is new, guys, counter. It is new. I was reflecting on it between yesterday and today. Yesterday I called it the Sinkfield Cup live coverage. Okay, H3, E5, D5, Knight H5. Whoops. Wrong window. Oh my goodness. Hi Dina, thank you for the raid. Let me recommend you to my 10 followers here. Folks, here's a link where you could follow Dina. She's a nice person and a great chess teacher. So she's got a link here on Twitch. For those of you on YouTube, I probably can't share it, but I'll try. Let's see. Hi, everybody. I'm David. I'm one of the 3 coaches here who runs Chess Dojo. I'm going to be covering this super tournament in St. Louis in about 15 minutes, but right now I'm just working on my opening repertoire real quick while waiting for the tournament to start. Well, I mean, it's not like I don't want to do the thing I'm doing. It's not like I'm just waiting. Okay, so here in my Blitz game, I played Bishop G5, but for my repertoire, we're going to play either Bishop E3 or Rook to G1. St. Louis Chess Club is the biggest chess club in the US, I think. There's another really cool one in Charlotte, which might be like the second biggest and most active chess club in the US now. I'd love to visit either club, you know, do a little pilgrimage to one or the other. So what's the idea here with this move? Okay, and if we play this move instead, interesting. Let's assume most players would play like this as black. Oh, love it. Guys counter, you mean with the sparring, huh? Where I have other people spar and I give them some feedback on their games in between? Yeah, I'm not trying to become a GM. I'm just trying to enjoy chess and teach others. Okay, I like this line, so that's what I'm going to put in as my main line, what I just found here. So I'm going to play this move order, bishop e3, f5, bishop d3. I'm going to put in a note here that after bishop e3, knight a6, we'll go rook b1, f5, bishop d3, knight f4, simply takes, 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 castles. Haha. This is right up my alley. A boring, simple position. That's all we need to know. That's all we need to know. Or more than we need to know, even. I don't have any tournaments on the horizon right now, Demola. Yeah, unfortunately. I wish I did. But I don't. I have a tiny little coaching competition coming up in September that should be fun, that Dina's also part of, where we're going to each pick 4 people to coach, and we get 1 month to coach them, and then at the end of the month we see whose students can beat each other in a tournament. So that's going to be fun. And I just spent the last month coaching a group of people who are playing in the Maya International starting tomorrow. So we'll see how they go. I did sort of like a kind of a similar thing on my own without the competition aspect. What was your question, Sushan? What did I miss? What does it mean that Magnus has character? I don't know. It's pretty vague, Sushan. It could mean he has good character or bad character. Everybody has some kind of character. Without more context, I don't know. I don't know what it means. All right. So let's put that game to rest and open up another one. And over here in the Sinkfield Cup, let's just open up another board so I can hear it if they start moving, you know? So I can hear the click, click, click of their pieces when they get going. Okay. So these games are all going to be with this new H3 line. But it's interesting that in the first 4 games I played with this line, I drew 1 and lost 3, and the most recent 3 I won. This is a very different line. Yeah, obviously I'm not doing anything wrong here. This position is very easy for white. You're playing a classical tournament in a couple weeks after a long break, huh? That's what yeah. Can you tell me exactly how many days you have, Mr. J? And I'll tell you 1 or 2 things real quick. Did I lose this game? I did. Okay. So first of all, the most important thing you can do is play a training game that most closely mimics the conditions you'll be playing in your classical tournament. So time control, set up a real board if you have to play online, use a real score sheet, etc. Do whatever you can to play at least one training game that mimics as well as you can the conditions. If you can play OTB with a real board against a friend or an acquaintance at a chess club or something, that would be even better, but I don't know what exactly is around you. You've got exactly 2 weeks. Okay, so first of all, normally, Mr. J, I wouldn't say that playing Blitz and Bullet is terrible. Like, I don't go around telling people not to do what they like, you know. If you like Blitz and Bullet, just because I like Classical, I wouldn't tell you you shouldn't play Blitz and Bullet just because I don't like them as much. But if you play masses of Blitz and Bullet and no Classical, and then you go to a Classical tournament, your brain's going to be very much tuned wrongly. So if you want to maximize your Classical tournament to some extent, you might want to take 1 or 2 weeks off of Blitz and Bullet and try and slow down your thought processes to adapt towards your Classical tournament. It's just a suggestion. I don't mean to push you on that, okay? At the same time, if you've got 14 days till your tournament, very important is that the last 1 or 2 days before the tournament, you rest. That means you've got like 12 days. You can't do much training in 12 days. The most important thing is going to be to play 1 Classical practice game or even 2. The second most important thing is going to be to create 1 or 2 goals for yourself for the tournament that you can use to keep yourself focused during the tournament. Because, you know, during a tournament, there's all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of emotions, you know, winning, losing, you know, a blunder, a good move, an excitement, a new opening, somebody you meet. There's so much stuff going on at a chess tournament. If you've got 1 or 2 goals to focus on, not 10 goals, not 0 goals, 1 or 2, that can help you like pull in your focus when you need to in the midst of the tournament. It can help you avoid emotional pitfalls. It gives you something to work on. Like, let's say you play 4-round tournament and you lose the first 3 games. What are you doing in round 4? Some people are just throwing it away upset. But if you've got your goal, which was to come out of the opening with a playable position, then that's something for you to think about during the first 15 moves of that 4th game. You focus on your goal. You forget about the 0-3, the travel, you know, the money, the job tomorrow, whatever it might be. You forget about everything. You just like, I just need to achieve my goal of getting to move 15 with a playable position. In my first 3 rounds, I achieved that 2 out of 3 games. So if I achieve it in this game, that'll be 3 out of 4 games that I achieved my goal from this tournament, and that'll be like a good thing that I've achieved, and I can take that forward to my next training or tournament, etc., right? So you need that. So you need that goal. So that's the second thing you want to do, is make sure that you sit down and you pick 1 or 2 goals that make sense for you. Third thing that you could do would be about 30 minutes of calculation training a day. Depends on your rating and your level, what's best for you. Generally, players under 1200 should be doing, you know, 1 or 2 move tactics at a rate of, you know, 1 to 2 minutes per tactic for about 15 minutes a day. Players between 1200 and 16, 17, 1800 should be doing puzzles that take them, you know, 3 to 5 minutes, and they should be doing half an hour a day. And about these are really approximate, and I obviously would know better if I knew more about you as a player or other people as players, you know. So they want to be doing something like 6 to 10 problems in a 30-minute session of 3 to 5 minute puzzles, and going really high for accuracy. And then over 1800, there's 1 or 2 different routes that you could take, but one example would be you're spending an hour doing 6 to 8 difficult puzzles, you know, that are taking you about 10 minutes, and you're probably only getting somewhere between 50 and 60% right, because you're doing really hard puzzles. So playing classical game, journal yourself your goals. What are your goals? What are you focused on at the tournament? What are you trying to improve? They should be something X and O, not like I want to go 4-0 or I want to make a friend or something like that. Like a goal that you can think about during your chess games, right? Something X's and O's. How I'm going to respond when my opponent surprises me, or how I'm going to use my time, or how I'm going to play the opening, or what I'm going to do when I have an advantage, or something like that. You see what I mean? And you can make it could be very, very specific if you like. And then the last thing you could do that would make sense would be review the training game you play, or the training games you play. I think in 12 days, 1 to 2 games. 2 games is really doable. 1 game is a minimum. And then you, like, let's say you play 4 hours playing the game, you can spend an hour or 2 looking at the game that you've played. and just see what you notice about your play. And then, physical exercise is always good, and eating healthy is always good, and sleeping well is always good. All three of those things are really valuable. Like if I had a tournament in 5 days, the best thing I could do would be to just sleep the most possible for 5 days and like basically forget about training. I'd probably do, 1 hour of calculation because I'm not going to sleep 24 hours a day. So I'd probably do an hour of calculation each day and sleep just the most I could. So make sure you do all those things. And for me, 1 or 2 days before the tournament, I'll taper down the exercise. So it's basically very light exercise, right? Like a brisk walk, not something where you're sore or aching or exhausted, right? But just something where you're keeping the blood flowing. And then I would carry that through the tournament. During the tournament, you want to do 30 to 60 minutes of mild walking each day. Or something comparable, play some ping pong, swim a little bit, something like that. Hey, Leviathan. Hope you're doing well. Hey, 11 years. Welcome in. All right. So here I didn't play the system that we're probably planning to play. I just tried something I didn't know. And how did I do? Yeah, I'm probably crushingly good here. Let's just see what the computer evaluates my position at move 13 or 14. Plus 0.8. I eventually lose this game. But, opening's not to blame. White is winning here. So let's turn off the analysis and go back to another game. You're welcome, Mr. J. Obviously, I could give you even better advice if, I knew a lot more about you. Like, your rating and how much you've played before and blah, 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 blah. How much time you have, whether you have a job, whether you're stronger or weaker at endgames, openings, tactics, etc. All of that would allow me to give you a more precise profile. Did this thing again. Why was I doing this thing? Okay, well, let's just see what the computer thinks of this line. It says white's basically winning already. Jeez, that's crazy. Bishop e2 castles. Bishop e3 is fine here. Knight d7. Whew! That move's bad. That's a stinker of a clunker. But there's only one good move in response for black, apparently, and they didn't find it. So play it here. I played here, which is obviously correct. God, they wasted a move in such a scary position, and now they're getting defeated. The computer says h4 is even better than g5 by a tiny bit. Yeah, negligible. I don't think it makes a big difference. Yeah, negligible. I'm not sure I even believe this computer. It's not strong. I'm not using a supercomputer here, so it could be wrong. F5 is right. And now, what are my instincts? Yeah, I remember this game. I missed here the move knight a7. And I was really disappointed later that I didn't find that move, because that's an obvious move. Well, I mean, maybe not in Blitz, but I mean, it's an obviously crushing move if you notice it. In a classical game, of course, one would notice it. Oof, that's rough, Leviathan. Sorry to hear that. But hopefully it's not going to continue too much longer. I don't see any moves yet from the players. Oh, C4 from Prague. Time to switch programs, more or less. I'll leave these games open so I can review them more later. Let's go to the Sinkfield Cup, my friends. Also now known as the Evil Billionaire Cup. Broadcast, change the title. All right, live from St. Louis. 10 of the best chess players in the world. Classical chess. Today is round 4. You can see the standings right here by my head, and the standings are out of 3, which tells you it is round 4 right now. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave playing a risky offbeat defense of the Queen's Gambit against our hero, young Gukesh. And yeah, the standings tell you part of the story of this tournament. The tournament started with Pragnananda easily defeating Gukesh in round 1. He has since drawn 2 games and he's tied for the lead. Levon Aronian won in the first round against Noterbeck, who is playing very confidently, but not his very best for the first couple rounds. So Aronian then drew 2 games. He's tied for first place. And finally, an important detail, Gukesh, after losing in the first round to Prague, he recovered with a nice crushing win against... let me change the title of our show here. He recovered with a nice crushing win against Noterbeck in round 2. And so he got back to an even score. And then finally, Firouzja had won a game in round 2, but in round 3, he got beaten by Caruana in a game which I cannot fathom. I played through it. I even checked some positions with the computer evaluation. I just don't understand. Firouzja did understand. He knew he was in trouble at some point and was spending gobs of time trying to defend a position where I didn't even realize he was trying to defend or what he was trying to defend against. But ultimately, Fabi won that game. So that's a game where if you're like a GM or at least a GM of positional chess, you might want to look into that, see if you can learn something from it. But Fabi won that game beautifully yesterday, and so he moves into the lead as well with 1 win and 2 draws. The barn burner between Gukesh and Noterbeck, I did a video on it immediately and threw it up on the YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to see more of that game from round 2, either because you saw part of it and thought, wow, that's exciting, or just because you didn't see it, it's up there on YouTube. It's a very calculation-heavy game, and I don't draw a bunch of beautiful positional conclusions from the game. I just revel in the fact that there's a lot of cool calculations in chess. Sometimes calculation's just fun. Now, let's have a look at Gukesh's game first. It's an offbeat opening, right? We start d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6. Very calm, Queen's Gambit, and Vachier-Lagrave c5. Like, what is this defensive move? Was not played for ages. Throws it out here, and we get a chance to see, is this a huge surprise for Gukesh, or has he prepped even, pretty weird openings recently? He responds pretty quickly by taking on c5 and pretty quickly with bishop e3 as well, and says, yeah, Maxime, I'm not completely caught off guard here. Bishop e3 blocking in this pawn. And that means blocking in this bishop on f1. So this is not a trivial decision. I guess, he wants to trade here at some point and then play Catalan style, maybe? Maybe he hand-slipped? It would be hard to hand-slip, right, in a game like that? Hey, Profiteer. Hope you're doing good. I have not prepped this line, so I don't know what white should be doing or how bad or good this c5 move is. And now Gukesh is thinking a bit. So I guess, he wasn't armed to the teeth. This is offbeat. Didn't Hikaru, against Prague or somebody, uncork this crazy defense of the Queen's Gambit recently? I think. So pretty a similar search for weird stuff. All right, so I can address the title right now if you all want, but I'm not going to address it like 10 times over the course of the day because the point is to look at chess. But I'd been thinking about it a bit. We did this show about the Esports World Cup in Saudi Arabia, right? There's a Dojo podcast or Dojo Talks episode about it, so some of you may have heard that, right? And we talked about how the Saudi royal family has this huge amount of money, and they're trying to improve their public image by investing in various kinds of sports, now even including esports and even chess as quote unquote an esport. And obviously if you do extreme purity tests, then ultimately you can't do anything with anybody, right? Like, there are things I've done wrong in my life, so you could say I won't do a show with David Proust, right? And ultimately, with extreme purity tests, I understand that no one could do anything with anyone. We'd all be boycotting all of each other all the time at every point, right? So I understand that you could go to too far an extreme, right? But you could also shake hands with Adolf Hitler and work in work in some collaboration with him. And most of us would also agree that that's too much, right? That there's some things that are beyond the pale of what we should work with, right? So everybody has someone or something that they don't want to associate with, that they think is bad enough that they don't want to be part of it, right? We all have that. We draw a line somewhere. To some extent, everybody believes in quote-unquote cancel culture, right? It's just we have a different line where we draw who we will or will not associate with or work with, right? Where to draw that line, I don't know, and I think maybe nobody knows. It's a hard thing to do, and wherever you draw the line, there will be a gray area around that line, right? Like, you say, I won't work with people who've killed other people. That's one maybe logical line, right? But even then, there will be cases of what about somebody, who approved a vaccine that, had a side effect that killed somebody? Is the doctor who approved that vaccine a killer or something like that? That's in a direction of another touchy subject in the US, but I'm not saying anything about, I'm not trying to intimate anything in particular about vaccines by bringing up that example. It's just something that I've heard of. And then on the other hand, you'd have, this guy, he didn't kill people. He only ordered other people to kill people or something like that. So no matter what line you try and draw, my point is just going to be, there's going to be gray areas on either side of it, right? And that's the case for almost anything you try and do in life. When we try to categorize the top 10 American chess players, we had to say, well, is Frank Marshall an American chess player if he really learned chess between age 12 and 21 in Montreal, Canada? Okay, I know that's America, but United States chess player, right? But he was a US champion. He played in the US for 50, 60 years. So there's always going to be gray areas, right? Which means, we can't be confident that we're drawing the line correctly, or even once we've drawn the line, we can't be confident who is or isn't too far beyond the pale of those various lines, right? Now, the Saudi royal family, I'm not an expert on Saudi Arabia, so in a certain sense, I shouldn't even be making any judgments about the Esports World Cup, the Saudi royal family, etc., right? But based on the little bit that I do know, there was the, publicized murder of a journalist, right, Jamal Khashoggi. Again, not an expert on it, but it seems like, the Saudi crown prince ordered that murder. So I've got a vague sense that the Saudi royal family is willing to kill people for money and power, etc. And therefore, in our podcast, again, not with great confidence, because we don't know that much about Saudi Arabia, but in our podcast, we kind of concluded that that tournament was one that the players should not participate in. Right? I'm sorry, Orion PT. I was trying to say, like, you could have an example of someone who's done something which somehow led to a death, that they weren't trying to kill somebody, right? I mean, all I want to do is try and make the point that there will be gray areas around any line, right? And I'm sorry that I gave a very bad example for it, but what would be a better example? You could say, I drove a car and the exhaust from my car killed your unborn granddaughter. So am I a killer that you don't want to associate with and you don't want to watch my chess videos? Does that work for you? I don't. The military's a little too obvious. That's kind of like their business is killing people. But like wherever I draw the line, there will be areas that are gray, right? Things that people could argue about is that person really a killer or not a killer or something? Even something as simple as killing, right? Like somebody could say that the Saudi crown prince is not a killer because he only ordered other people to do the killings and he didn't do it with his own hands or something. I don't know. In any case, all this is just to tell you, right, that like I don't, or Pizza Racer, right? Their mom died of lung cancer. Did the tobacco company kill her, right? Like, what are the executives of the tobacco company killers? Should I do commentary on a chess tournament that is sponsored by Philip Morris or something like that, right? So partly I'm bringing up the fact that there's gray areas to both say it's okay if you have a different opinion than me, right? Because nobody really knows the answers on these questions with certainty. Is that fair to say? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about it or make decisions, right? And by all of us thinking about it and making repeated decisions, we can gradually over time make better decisions, right? We can improve our morals by practicing our morals, just like we improve our tactics by practicing our tactics. Okay? So Jesse Coasty and I practiced our morals by talking about this Esports World Cup topic. And so we decided that we thought it was wrong for the top players to participate in that tournament. And, especially Magnus, who was not only playing in the tournament, but taking on a role of global ambassador for them, which includes a contract where he can only say good things about the Saudi royal family and not negative things, right? And the fact that Magnus is somebody who doesn't need the money, right? Again, the case could be different if you had a player who was struggling to survive or feed their family, and they played in the tournament to earn $20,000 in order to feed their family, and they were otherwise destitute or something. You'd have different cases, but Magnus has millions, and he doesn't need it, right? So we made a judgment that shouldn't be done. Ironically, folks, it's been my dream for 15 years to do live commentary at a chess tournament with top players. I had this dream in 2009 when I was working at chess.com, and I had the idea that you could create basically chess programs, TV programs about chess, stream them through the internet, do live commentary on top tournaments the way you've got coverage of other sports on ESPN, and people could watch and it would be exciting and great. I had that concept in 2009. I started working on it. I've been working on it for 15 years, on and off, in different ways, and it's been one of my lifelong dreams. So ironically, right after we released that podcast, maybe 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, I got contacted by some organizers of the Esports World Cup offering to fly me to, you guessed it, Riyadh to do the live commentary on the Esports World Cup. And despite all the time that I've worked on this subject and dreamed about this subject, I've actually never been able to go do commentary at a live tournament. When I was working on it at chess.com 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, it hadn't yet reached that point. We didn't yet have the money or the budget. Chess.com didn't yet have enough money to put on its own events. We weren't well enough known for organizers to invite us to come do commentary at their tournaments. Most tournaments didn't yet realize how valuable it would be to have commentators there, so they weren't even hiring anybody to come do commentary at their tournaments, period, right? So 15 years I've dreamed of it, but I've never actually had the opportunity to do it myself. Now it's arrived, and I never get invited, unfortunately. And I finally received this invitation. That's crazy, right? I can't believe that's the one invitation I got in my entire life. But as Ashkill guessed, of course, I had to turn it down, and I didn't go do the commentary on the World Esports Cup. So I've been thinking about this topic quite a bit, and yesterday I was thinking, and like yesterday and today I was walking the dog or whatever and just thinking like Sinkfield Cup, like with the St. Louis Chess Club, we're always like giving credit and honor to this guy Rex Sinkfield because he's given some money to chess, but he's just a bad dude. So I don't want to glorify his name, you know? I don't know how bad a dude he is either because I haven't spent my life researching him. But billionaires are basically bad dudes. As somebody asked, do I think all billionaires are bad dudes? I used to assume that every single billionaire had to be a bad dude or dudette, right? But then I did read about a billionaire who gave away all of their money except $1 million for their retirement and $1 million for their wife's retirement. So they gave away, you know, something like $8 billion and kept $1 million for themselves and $1 million for their wife for their old age, retirement, medical costs, stuff like that. Depending where you live, you might think $1 million sounds like insane and evil itself, but in the US, with healthcare costs, if you're thinking of like you're not going to have a job and you're going to be retired and old, I think it was very reasonable, actually. So that actually disproved one of my theories that every billionaire is evil, right? When I read about that guy. So most rules or ideas you have are going to have exceptions in them. I still think most billionaires are probably bad people. Maybe the guy was a bad person when he made his billions and then he changed and gave it away. It's very likely. Most people change over time. So you could be bad and then you could be good, or you could be good and then you could be bad, and back and forth. Bill Gates, I think, is a terrible person. Yeah. Pretty clear case. A lot of billionaires donate money without ever running out of money. Just the fact that they donate. And this is one of the sickest things about billionaires, that they donate money and then they put their names on stuff and everybody's supposed to like thank them and give them credit. But all that money they have, they just scammed and defrauded from other people to get it. And then they make you thank them for giving some of it back. As long as they stay super rich, it's BS. Like Bill Gates, he's just doing a big tax scam with his donations. You know, he gives money to his own nonprofit that he's in charge of, and he takes tax write-offs on that, and then his nonprofit just invests the money and makes profits on its endowment. You know, it's never actually losing money or just giving the money back to other people. The proper thing to do if you have too much money is to relinquish the control of it and give it back to other people. Let them decide what to do with it. Just redistribute it and apologize for what you've done. Not ask people to lick your boots for the kindness of you returning some of what you stole. So yeah, Bill Gates is a very good example of what I imagine the typical billionaire is like. So anyway, not all billionaires are necessarily evil, but probably all but one or two of them are. And Sinkfield is a bad dude. I'm pretty confident about that. And so, you know, am I going to boycott this tournament? Nah, it's a great tournament. I want to watch the games. You know, if a billionaire were handing out bread in a line, I might take the bread, but I would still say that they're still evil. So I just want to make clear we're covering the tournament, but I'm not giving him any honor. I'm not thanking him or respecting him for anything that he's done, quote unquote, for the chess community. You know, and I'll tell you this thing as well. Here's another pattern that I've learned in life, which probably has one or two exceptions, but people who name stuff after themselves are bad dudes. That's another group of people who are probably bad dudes. You know, if I were running a chess tournament, if I had an extra $1 million and the only thing I could think of to do with it was to run a chess tournament, you know, like I hadn't heard of food banks or anything like that, right? All I could think of was running a chess tournament. I wouldn't call it the David Proust Cup, right? if it were here in California, I might call it the California tournament or whatever, or I might ask somebody else to name it, but I wouldn't name a thing after myself. People go around naming things after themselves, right? Like the hospital in San Francisco got renamed the Zuckerberg Hospital. F him, what a jerk. Anybody who's doing that kind of stuff, they're bad dudes. Again, there could be one or two exceptions, but really, really dubious move. All right, so we got a 15-minute think from Gukesh, followed by a basic developing move, putting pressure on d5, but giving Vachier the time to take if he wants to. And with the pawn on e2 blocked, it's not clear how Gukesh is ever going to win back this pawn. Sorry, I'm going to take one moment to read your comments in chat, but we're not going to continue rehashing that topic, right? I've kind of given my opinion, which could be completely wrong or slightly wrong or whatever, but that's my opinion. And then we're gonna look at these chess games, right? Because that's what we're really here for. So Pizza Racer says, yeah, something about alms from the rich versus the government officially providing for things. Yes, if you don't live up to your beliefs, then what are your beliefs worth, right? Good question. Anuan asks, if a person creates a wonderful medicine that saves billions of people's lives and earns billions in the process and then decides to keep it all, are they evil? Probably. I mean, it's case by case. There'd be more details about them. Why did they keep it? What are they using it for? Is there a difference between the Evil Billionaire Cup and the Saudi government? Yes, the Saudi government is probably more evil than the Evil Billionaire Cup. But yeah, if their medicine could save billions of people's lives, maybe just reduce the price on it so that more people can get the medicine. Because if you're talking billions of people don't have enough money to buy whatever this wonder medicine is, right? Yeah, if they want their name in my mouth, it's Demola, then it's going to be, along with scorn and criticism, right? So that's the place they can have in my mouth. All right. MVL is good at pulling off draws. And yeah, back to the chess. Okay, so we've got a chess question about when do you start thinking in terms of conversion, right? It's a question we have here. From Skibix. At what point in an advantage do you think about converting it? I don't think that when you're playing a chess game, you go from like one mode to conversion mode. I don't think conversion mode is even a separate mode in chess. When you're playing chess, you're just trying to play the best that you can. So you're trying to improve your position or, realize a certain advantage in a certain way. So I don't know that there's like a separate mode for converting. There, you do have a sense of, is my position winning or am I just pressing it? In some positions, you think about where the evaluation is, and that helps you decide what continuations to go for. In other positions, you just do the best thing you can, and you'll find out the evaluation later. That can really depend. So I'm sorry, there's not a great answer to that question, Skivix, but I don't think I ever said in a game and say, okay, now it's time to convert. I'm just always just trying to play good moves, I guess. Sometimes I know my advantage is big enough that if I play well, it will be decisive. I might change like what risks I take or don't take at that point, and there's all these little things that you fine tune, but I don't have a separate mode. All right, so MVL does take back the pawn on c4. And now these two pawns are going to be the subject of controversy, right? because the pawn on c4 and c5 is on the wrong side of the other person's pawn and close to the opponent's pieces. So if white wins the pawn on c4, they'll be up a pawn and maybe have better chances of defending c5. If black wins the pawn on c5, they'll be up a pawn and perhaps have better chances of defending the pawn on c4. So these two pawns, very, very much like the crux of the position early on to my eye here. What I think of is like maybe knight g4 for black, harassing the bishop that's on this. That's a theme that looks really worrisome to me from white's side. If black had played that last move instead of pawn takes c4, maybe the move bishop g5 is okay, tempoing the queen. And then perhaps f6 could come in. Pawn takes, hitting that knight. Pawn takes. Actually, maybe we don't even play bishop g5. Maybe we just take the pawn, right? Pawn takes. Knight takes. Pawn takes. Pawn takes. Queen takes. How's this? Nah, do I believe this? No, white can't get this piece out. The dark squares are trash. I don't even care if I keep two pawns up. I don't believe this. Bishop g5. I think it should be bishop g5, f6, cd, ed, and then something, but I don't know what. Cd, ed. Oh yeah, now bishop f4 because there's no pawn to go here. Now the pawn on f6 is not a beautification of black's position, right? Bishop c5 looks good. e3, maybe d4. If the pawn were on f7, black would be in great shape. Great shape, right? Checking it. Yeah, the supercomputer says this would be all the main line here. Okay. So Maxime could have done that. And it would look exactly like this. If the pawn were on f7, black might even be slightly better, hilariously. With the pawn on f6, black's probably slightly worse, right? Just a tiny bit. Just there's some tactics, and the knight doesn't have the normal square to go to. Yeah. Yes, Skibix. Gukesh is good on both sides of these c-pawn positions. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, but MDL plays dc4, which makes sense. And now... Oh, we have to adjust our sensei evaluation for today. I hadn't yet updated that. Sorry, folks. So that's on the far side next to MVL and Gukesh's heads. You can see a sensei evaluation. That's not a computer engine evaluation. That is my best guess of what the current evaluation is in the live position. It doesn't adjust automatically. I have to adjust it when somebody asks me to update it or when I think to update it. It doesn't reflect like variations I'm playing out. So like, for example, if here for Gukesh, I looked at the move knight d5, you can see that after pawn takes d5, black has the advantage, but my eval bar over here is not changing. Okay? It's not automatic. I have to change it. So it doesn't switch to -3. The evaluation just remains the evaluation, I think, of the live position currently. How do top players pick their openings in a certain tournament? I don't know that, guys. Counter. Never been a top player. Never asked one of them how they did it. Actually, I guess I know one top player and I know how they pick, but I'm not going to reveal it. So I can't even give you that one answer. Since folks will be able to guess who I know. Okay, so here let's find a move for Gukesh other than knight to d5, shall we? Hey, Sanyal, how are you doing? Must be Thursday night near bedtime for you. Oh, and one other warning, folks. I'm going to take an hour and 15-minute break in the middle of the round today to go swim. That's just how my day worked out. You know, I've got somebody who wants to go swimming with me. And even though I'm a beginner of doing workouts, I've only been doing guided workouts for about 2 months. This person has never done it, so I'm going to introduce them to a workout. And then I'll come back and we'll continue the coverage of the tournament. So, yeah. An hour of chess and then bed. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so DC4. Nope, not knight d5. I was hoping that the interface would give me a suggestion for Gukesh, and now I'm stuck on that. Oh, we got an interesting game between Prague and Sevian as well down there. Okay, let's think about this from Gukesh's perspective. The move knight g4 is coming in a moment anyway. Wait, the queens are opposing each other. I assumed long ago that if dc4 he would trade on d8. So let's assume that I'm right on that. Queen d8. Knight d8. Does this move do anything? Here? So that, I think knight d5 defends against this knight b5 move, at least. There's complications with castle's queenside. You know, bishop d7, rook takes d5, e d5, knight c7, etc. But I've just done a very basic calculation, which could have holes in it. And I believe knight d5 answers knight b5. So let's guess queen d8, knight d8, and then some normal moves like bishop d4. Getting out of the way of knight g4 in advance, but also I'm just trying to play e3, right? So knight c6, e3 is my concept. Oh, Pizza Racers is on the same idea as me. So I want to play bishop takes c4. I'm willing to give up the bishop pair for this kind of defense of my c-pawn. It feels pretty hard for black to break the pawn then, right? I feel like I'm going to be up a pawn here for white. That makes sense, and I don't see black's defense to that. And this is, Gukesh is burning a lot of time, but I assumed this would be the move. And now I'm pretty happy with the idea of bishop d4. So maybe black would take with the king. Will you Castleovich? Bishop d7. King c7, knight b5 does not delight me. It looks like it might even lead to checkmate before move 10. Oh, sorry, it is move 10, but, you know. It feels quite a bit like the end here. So let's assume castles check, bishop d7. And now a move for white, yeah? It's very tricky to figure out the next move. Not easy moves for black, not easy moves for white here. Maybe knight g5 to e4, emphasizing the d6 square and the defense of this pawn for now. Hard to justify a rook sack in the endgame, huh? I've never thought about that, Skibex, so I don't know. I assume that the team gave everything they had during the World Championship match. I don't see why Vincent would hold back on chess ideas during the World Championship match. But, you know, I am surprised at the quality of Gukesh's opening play since. And when we say opening play, it's, you know, mostly talking about opening. What I'm really talking about is opening prep, not like how well he plays positions he doesn't know in the opening. Although that does seem to also be a weakness of his. But his opening prep has been less than I would have expected. Since the World Championship match. So it's certainly something to wonder about. Wait. If the king went here, maybe then we'd go knight b5, right? No, there's knight here. We've talked about this before, David. But now the tempi are different. Threatening this. Should be 6. Should have 4. Tempo. This is a very difficult line. The bishop's on e3 to defend the c5 pawn, Skivix. Look at this. It's not relaxing, this position. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. Woot, woot, woot. Found a weird operation based on this rook being awkward, right? That's the only square it can go to, and it stops bishop c5. Look at this line. This line might be winning for white. Very, very weirdly, without the white pieces being out. But, you know, if I can really get these pass pawns going quickly... it could be an extraordinarily good position for white without development. Very weird. Very weird line. That's one of the weirdest lines I've ever tried. Knight d5 takes, check takes. Black has to defend f7 logically. Now we can force the escape of the knight, it seems. But if we take on e6... right? Then on knight c7, there's here. Even that's playable for white. You just go here, here, here. 2 extra pawns. Sick trap, bishop c5, knight e6. King d7, knight g6, and you take that piece, maybe. Or even king d7, you just play simple here, 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 2 extra pawns. This doesn't seem sound for black. This might work for white, after all. But my other line, I retreated. Black tries to trap the bishop. I try to get out. Tempo. Try to get out. This happens. Yeah. Okay. I assume that Gukesh hasn't moved. Let's just double check. He did. He traded queens after 20 minutes, and now he's continuing to think. I guess it was good to see if Maxime was going to take it with king or knight. I would have played queen d8 instantly, and then only thought about king or knight depending which one Maxime played. Saved myself half my work. So here our idea was bishop d4. It looks very good for white. All right, I'm computer checking my variation, which was wrong. Knight g5, king e8. Why is it wrong? It's not showing me. Let's see some analysis here. I don't like the misleading evaluation bar. Okay, so let's go analysis. So knight g5, king e8. I played knight b5. Oh, black can play rook c8 instead of going into tactics because the bishop's not on c8 like in the other position. And then knight b5 is stupid. Okay, but what the computer points out is that this line with queen d8, king d8, white can just play h3 to stop knight g4, the move that I kept playing for black. Just play h3, lose a whole tempo, and then white's better. Right? The king's in the way of the piece's development. Black doesn't have a way to win this pawn back. White can go g4, bishop g2, and big advantage for white. Big advantage. Nothing for black to do. The only move for black was knight g4, so h3. I feel like that's a lesson for me because I didn't see that move, and it's a very clear move. Well, that's not even fair. I saw the move h3, and I said, no, I can't lose a tempo. Let me look for other moves. Obviously, I saw h3, and I thought, what a crummy move. We could never play that move. I'm going to store that position as a puzzle. If you ever get it on a dojo test, you'll be like, ooh, I already know the answer. Lucky me. Okay. Baby Krabby says this Gukesh MVL game will end as a draw. Let's get back to the live position. Queen d8, knight d8. He plays rook d1. So in this position, my idea was bishop d4. So we'll just put that in. I thought bishop d4. And I did not see a defense for black. Let's see if the computer can defend against me if I let the computer play a move. All right, here's what the computer does. Bishop d7, e3, rook c8, bishop c4, bishop c5, equal. Gotta hand it to the computer. Pretty bloody effective. I didn't see that coming at all. All right, so Gukesh plays rook d1. Good question, Pizza Racer. I'm not going to answer it today. I've done enough talking about that theme. Now I got to talk about some chess. I mean, I would guess that it depends on their future actions, you know. Winning the jackpot on its own is not an evil thing to do. Just perhaps a dumb thing to do. Oh, you're going to get me in trouble. All right, so rook d1. What is Gukesh's point with rook d1? What is he doing? I guess he's preventing knight d5? Is that the point? Interesting that if he wanted rook d1 that he didn't castle, right? Because it's not super easy to coordinate this bishop on f1. So if you wanted rook d1, why not castle? That I don't know. MVL's already played his response. Good God. He plays knight d5 anyway. Oh God. Gukesh is half an hour down and he's definitely in MVL's prep here. He is definitely in MVL's prep. So I understand why the crab just a moment ago, I understand why the baby crab was saying the game's going to end in a draw. When black is super prepared for a game and it's not a super sharp position, right? Queens are off the board. There's a little bit of sharpness to it, but it's not super sharp. When black's really well prepared in classical chess at this level, that tends to lead to draws. So Krabby's probably going to be right. Let's turn our attention to the Prague game for a moment, right? Given that we've got this impending threat of a draw here, Maxime blitzing out moves here. Bishop e6, and I guess the idea is the rook retreats. He goes rook c8. We learned that theme from a computer. And then just takes. And meanwhile, white's doing what? You know, g3, bishop g2. Maybe white should, in the meantime, go rook c1, trade the bishop, play e3, knight d4. Play black's kind of moves, go after this pawn. So it would be something like rook c1, rook c8. Bishop here, takes, here, right? Here. I don't know, something like this. But yeah, black's pretty solid, right? Looking to get a tempo to develop everything. Yeah, I don't know. No special advantage for anybody there, I guess. Bishop e6, that could be reasonable. Anyway, Gukesh is thinking, let's have a look down here at Prague's game. I'm going to back it up to move 1 so I can see. English opening move order. Quickly, a Queen's Gambit. Tarrasch defense, a specialty of Savion since he was a kid. Takes. Knight f3. There's some line, I think, where you can go dc5, d4, knight e4, bishop c5, knight c5, queen a5 check, and takes. Gukesh has retreated the rook. Okay, but this is like main line. Great. Just dark squared, rushing that dark squared bishop trade. Makes sense. The old main line that I used to play was like g3, knight f6, bishop g2, or maybe bishop g5, bishop e7, bishop g2, something like that. But the bishop would go to g5 in that position. But here, by bringing out the bishop quickly, Prague's able to just go with a quick e3 instead of g3. He does give up a development tempo, though, right? He moves this bishop twice, 1, 2, and black brings out the bishop and then the knight. So now he's down a tempo. It's a bad sign. Oh, but this pawn is hanging, so Sevian has to give a tempo here. Gaining space with it. Castle, castle, rook b8, preparing b5, b3, b5 trade. And then here was Sevian's big decision. He thought about which way to take back. He can go DC, super imbalanced, right? Pawn majority versus pawn majority. Or what he eventually chose, b takes c. Both look like they should be playable. And Prague immediately plays e4, which will weaken this pawn, right? I mean, the idea is just to recapture like this and then say that pawn's weak. This looks moderately acceptable. Just plant the bishop in the middle and defend the pawn for now. Sometimes you could trade it off and take here. My guess would be their position's pretty close to equal as well. Rook c8 from Maxime. Bishop d4 from Gukesh. Okay, so if bishop c5, he's going to grab that pawn, and if he gets checked, he'll just drop back to c3, so he'll stay up a pawn. Hey, that's a nice idea, Gook. You show him, Gukesh. I'm sure Maxime's already studied this, unfortunately. Let's see if Maxime finally thinks or if he just blitzes out the next move here. Looks like he's paused for a moment. What do we think of dc4? I'm guessing white would try and hit immediately while the knight on c6 has to leave the center, right? You always have to wonder about b4 as well, just automatically moving away. This is just about the only square the knight can go to otherwise. We can dispose of this variation quickly. Okay, that leaves knight a5. I'm not going to countenance knight b4 blocking this pawn and leaving the knight dangling here. e4, I don't know what it's doing. So we're just going to go knight a5. That defends this pawn here and prepares b4. A3 makes some sense, but then maybe knight b3 is useful. At least Gukesh finally got Maxime to stop blitzing with this move, bishop d4. Looks like Maxime's position has no choice but to take here. So he's got to play rook g8 or f6. And then take on c5 next move, unless Gukesh has another way to prevent him. Because if you play knight c6 and white plays e3, I don't think you ever get your pawn back as black. So I think he's got to play one of these moves. But it's a good sign for Gukesh if Maxime's thinking. You always want your opponent to stop playing the moves of Stockfish and start playing their own moves at some point, since they won't be as good as Stockfish. So knight a5. Do I play a3 anyway? Then knight b3, rook b1, a5, and they still get in b4. Should I consider running this pawn way ahead of the others to get my knight d5? No, that pawn might have gone too far. Yeah. Probably right. Show me the speed. Okay, so we go e4, b4. This knight's not happy. Never mind, that's not useful. I'm fighting over this square for my knight, and as black, I didn't want to let white play d6, e5 really. This position is so sharp. All the pawns want to advance, but they also have to be careful of like what squares the knights get or get denied. The knights are very susceptible to getting kicked somewhere not so good. This move lets me coordinate the rooks, lets me maybe take on a7 or play knight c5 or queen c5 or e5. I can't play e5 yet because of queen d5, right? In this position. e5, queen d5. So I go here wanting to put a rook behind that pawn, maybe threaten e5 at some point. f6 from Maxime, e4 from Gukesh. Man, I thought he'd go e3. He played that fast, though. I thought that Gukesh's idea was going to be to maybe like hold the piece on this square. You know, play something like this. Something of that sort. Or maybe rook c1, try and threaten this. Try and get this tempo at some point. You know. But e4. What's the plan? I guess he's advancing his pawn majority, since black's is already advanced. I assume Maxime played bishop c5 pretty quickly here. It's the only thing to do. Gukesh is going to trade bishops. And then maybe he'll play knight d4 or something. Should be a pretty close to equal endgame. Wow, he's playing some fast moves now. Go Gukesh. So, you know, should Maxime be precious about the bishop? Maybe. Well, then there's knight f5. You could do this and say you don't care about the bishop, that the development speed will be good enough for black here. You know, and the knight is not useless. I think that's what you probably have to do as black, is just leave the bishop here. I'm going to say it's dead equal, though. I'm going to drop my Sensei eval. I think, you know, Maxime just knew what he was doing. It looks very clear. My sense here, I kind of like white's chances in this variation I came up with for Prague and Sevian, had Sevian played d takes c4. It was a tough choice. He spent about 8 minutes on this here. Feels like d takes c4 would have been risky, so I like his d takes c4. So, no, sorry. It feels like d takes c4 would have been risky, so I like that he played bc4 probably. But now after e4, he hasn't moved yet. I feel like it's sound, though, what he's got here. I feel like it's sound. No move yet. All right. Fabi broke your heart? He might get completely crushed? Huh. Well, let's have a look. Let's check the other 3 boards, just see if there isn't anything even more exciting going on. Not Aronian's game. Wesley and Faruja. Whoa. What is this opening? Advanced Caro, huh? Such an aggressive move and gets completely ignored. That is really weird. Going and trading this bishop for the cramped knight? And leaving your light squares like that? That is a what from Wesley. Wow, I've never seen that decision before. So black's main idea is to go b6 and kick this knight. White's threatening the pawn at the moment, so black might have to be careful that here. Okay, there's a basic move here. That's great for white, yeah. But I was going to say black should also just wonder about this move, you know, before assuming that everything will be fine here. But yeah, just knight b7, it's obviously good for white. So black can't kick the knight out easily. I mean, it seems like black has to play h5, but he's thinking as if he's got other choices. G3 pawn sack? I don't see it. Yeah, I don't know what else Persia would want here other than h5. I guess it's a very complicated game. The knight's stopping this bishop stuff for now. But bizarre. Now, let's go check on Fabi, who's apparently broken Sushan's heart. This position looks weird, too. Is this an exchange? Queen's Gambit? Yeah. Here the bishop can't fall back because bishop d3, and you've got no retreat. Comes back this way, develops, avoids a trade, of course. Leaves it on g3, that's weird. Then comes forward. Counters in the center since a pawn storm's coming. Okay, so Noterbeck uses the hook to create a new hook on g5 to do this. g4 so that, you know, if he plays h4, there would be g4. You've seen this idea before, Sushan? I haven't seen this exact pattern before myself. Certainly, it looks scary. There's potential for counterplay, though I don't 100% see the counterplay yet. You could also use your knights to hop into some squares and just see what that gives you. When white plays h4, there will be bishop takes g4. Oh, this knight can't go to d6 anymore because of bishop g6. Because he's played this move g6. I wonder why he played g6. You know, versus just a developing move. Oh, then I guess white maybe throws in this check. Sorry, here, here, here. And basically, this file's open too soon. Can sack some pieces and mate. So he decided to stop bishop h7, king h8. That's why he plays g6. And the problem with that is that, let's say I play king b1 for Noterbeck, which is, you know, maybe not reasonable, but I just want to point out he can't really bring the knight to c4 and e4 like I was saying without allowing this destructive move, bishop takes g6. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, I was just having fun. But good on you for paying attention. Right? And then this is just destruction. Look how much you can hit here with check as well. You know, and or maybe more to the point, you now use the hook. Let's just show the point of this whole hook. You know, Bourbon Hound, these aren't even suspenders on Noterbeck here, right? These are when you play in the Olympiad. I think this picture's taken from an Olympiad. When you play in the Olympiad, FIDE gives you a little player card that hangs on a lanyard, and the players can only get into the playing area, I think, if they have this card on, which is kind of like a rectangle that says FIDE really big and then your name really small somewhere below FIDE. That's just brutal right here. So that says the knight can't go. Right now, you can't play bishop takes g6. Knight g7, right? And nothing clear. But of course, there will be positions where you could play bishop g6 as a full sack as part of your attack, right? In fact, Let's double check that. I just said we can't do it, but let's just double check. What if we follow with knight g5? You're welcome to think there are suspenders if you like that, for sure. Go for it. Has Sevian moved down here? No? Still thinking about that pawn on e4? All right. I hear you, Bourbon. I hear you. And maybe he did. I've just seen this, blue lanyard so many times. I've got it fixed in my mind, these FIDE cards. But you can do like Skibix and just choose to believe that they're suspenders. All right. Well, this is literally something that Noterbeck could play. So let's see if we can find a way to avoid checkmate for Fabi. And I mean something better than queen g5 check, right? Like a real way. This knight's a little awkward here, but queen check, there is bishop here, but there is knight check. I don't know what's going on here, Bourbon. By the way, I posted this video about Gukesh and Noterbeck and their game from round 2 with just insane calculations, and I mentioned that they're both great calculators, and somebody in the chat said, how could you even compare Noterbeck to Gukesh? Gukesh is just the greatest calculator. Noterbeck is whatever. I think Noterbeck's a very good calculator, my friends, and a direct line like bishop takes g6 that's super long. Oh man, he'll calculate the heck out of it. No problem. Now, Fabi probably calculated it too. Probably doesn't quite work, but he's played it. He's played it, folks. 16.5 minutes. Now, let me tell you, if this were hard for him to calculate, he would have spent 30 minutes on it. 16.5 minutes means he was just like, boom, boom, boom. Easy. Easy peasy, said Noterbeck. Easy peasy. What could be the engine's eval if we had to judge Sushan? I mean, honestly, from Noterbeck playing this move in 16 minutes, I would guess that it's much better for white, if not winning. I don't think he would have played it if it weren't good. If he spent 30 minutes on it, I could believe that it's so complicated that he wasn't sure and that he finally went with his instinct after not being able to calculate it completely, right? You know what I mean? Like sometimes you've calculated something, right? But you've got confidence intervals, right? Sometimes you're like, yeah, I think I really got it. Other times you're like, man, I just can't figure it out for sure. None of the lines look terrible. Like, I'm going to go for it. I believe in it enough to try it. But how fast he played this move, 16.5 minutes, that tells me like he's very confident in this move. And Fabi's getting torched. We're going to switch our main game to this game from the Gukesh versus MVL game. And we're just going to guess that it's about 1. But let's try and make our evaluation better by calculating some. You think he was still in prep up to this move, Evan? It's possible. He had so much time on the clock up to here. He had like an hour and 27 out of an hour and 30, but 10 minutes of increment added You know, he spent about 15 minutes so far in the game. Could that all be... He spent 4 minutes on g5, a minute and a half on castling queenside, a minute on g4. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know for sure if he's in prep or not. Let's say this. He played bishop d3 in 3 seconds, so I think he was familiar with this specific position with doubling those g-pawns. That much seems very likely. It is not a trivial decision to make. So up till that point, I think, yeah, he's in theory. Fabi immediately develops the queen, doesn't take, hits the knight. And that's the thing. I only showed you the first couple possible variations after bishop g6, fg6, the most obvious move. But it's very clear that black could play a move other than taking the bishop, right? White sacked a pawn. You give this pawn back. Queen's still back here. You don't want to necessarily invite her in. Looks like there's lots of possible moves black could play here other than taking. And this queen f6 move is a pretty controversial one. So within his 16.5 minutes, Noterbeck had to look at a bunch of moves other than fg6 as well. I don't see checkmate if black takes pair, but a pleasant position for white probably. Although it was still messy enough that I didn't know for sure. You know, this is like the kind of position we were looking at. King here. Knight takes. Knight takes, g5. And here, honestly, I was looking at queen a5. I was looking at knight e4. You know, it's... The king can't go this way because of queen h6 mate. But, I mean, it's not checkmate. This is an exchange up and winning for white. It's messy. I guess here it's the end of the line as well. But yeah, I think g5. You know, I didn't calculate it far enough to be sure, but I started feeling probably for white here. I considered the move queen a5 with date of pawn takes, rook takes, right? Now pawn takes, queen takes, king here. You don't have bishop h7 anymore. The queen can just take it. But there's probably a draw by perpetual with queen b4. But after rook c3, so maybe white just plays king b1, hides behind these pawns. You see? And maybe white's winning with a direct attack on the king, right? Something like knight f5, rook g1. Rook here, takes, and wins. Something like that. I mean, I can't be sure. I can't be sure. To me, it's too messy. There's too many possibilities I haven't looked at yet, and I'm explaining stuff, not just calculating my head off. I would need an hour probably to calculate what Noterbeck or Fabi calculate in about 10 or 15 minutes. So, or, you know, I'll probably even then still miss a couple moves that they look at, but to have like a sense of what's going on in the position to calculate most of it, I probably need 4 times as much time. So I don't know for sure that FG is mate, but it looked promising for white, I'm guessing. Black goes queen f6. And did Noterbeck... He must have planned something here. He's obviously not losing a piece anymore because he has the simple option of bishop h7 and rook to f1. As well as probably more complicated options. Part of the point of g6 for black is just to have a square to put the king on that's not on the h-file, right? Remember we mentioned why did he play g6 a little bit? Partly because of this idea of knight d6, check, king here, h4, right? And the king got mated in the line that we looked at. So part of the point of g6 is so that in some position like this, you don't have to go king h8, h4 and get ravaged. You can go king g7, and that's your little hiding place. Because white can open the h-file, but white can't open the g-file. So g6, you know, sacking back the pawn that white sacked, creating a spot for the king to hide on. I think we still got a game. I mean, it's early, Sushant, to say Fabi's going down. He's in a difficult position, but it's still a game. Okay, queen f6. We have a move on our other board, by the way. e4, d4, knight e4. And bishop g4. Sevian spent 27 minutes on d4. Obviously, I think he knew he was going to take on e4 the whole time, but he chose to think about his next move at this point instead of trading on e4 and then thinking about his next move. And he plays bishop g4, which looks interesting. The obvious move to me was bishop e6 to d5. That was my Mr. Basic. So he does something a little bit more interesting, which immediately threatens the d pawn, right? Bishop f3 and queen d4. It also leaves this pawn hanging. So there's an option immediately. I think they've even got some more moves played. There's an option immediately for Pragg to take on c4. He did. Because basically, you can take on c4. Black can't play knight d4 here, exploiting the pin in that way because of queen d4, and black hangs a piece. So if they want the pawn back, they're committing with bishop g4 to giving up the bishop pair. And I notice that Sevian hesitated for a minute on bishop g4 and a minute on bishop f3, despite surely planning the sequence back when he played d takes e4, and then queen d4, bishop b3, queen e5. So we get symmetrical position. White's just going to try and milk the bishop versus knight. Tiny advantage, but also an open position. You could quickly have one person or other get ahead just off of some threats and pieces getting onto more active squares. Black's idea is knight d4, kick the queen, trade b3, neutralize everything. White would love to play rook e1 here, start making some threats to move the knight, but it doesn't even seem to threaten to move the knight, because all the knight's aggressive moves, this queen can just move and capture the knight while getting out of the way of the rook. And on top of that, there's knight d4, which doesn't get prevented. So right here, I don't see a good move for Pragg. Like, nothing pops onto my instinct radar here, right? Maybe a weird move, rook b1? With the idea to answer knight d4 with check, but the queen's defending the rook. That ain't it, boss. I was even going to say, you know, after bishop f7, king h8, you probably lose your pieces just by being tied up. But, you know, I don't know for sure. But with the queen covering b8, black could just take immediately. So, can we go rook d1 and take the knight with the rook? No. Let's just double check knight f6 check. If queen here, we could takes with like a symbolic advantage for white, although it's a draw. Maybe, Sushant, thanks for the suggestion. Have we ever talked about time trouble as its full topic for an episode of Dojo Talks? Dojo Talks, time trouble. Why do people get into it? What could they do about it? I don't think we have. That's a good topic, period, Sushant, and he would be a good guest for that. Or Grishuk would be a good guest for that episode as well, depending who we can get. Okay, but here's the thing. After knight f6 check, Pawn takes f6. Now if rook takes knight f3, white loses a rook, so we got to go queen g4. Queen g5 takes. That's a big advantage for white. Or at least it has the feeling of being very promising, that position there. Yeah. It's great for white. How bad was this position for black, though? This one was only a symbolic advantage for white. This one black can draw. Rook a8. Simplify. I think it's still a draw, yeah. Tight note, yeah. I'm glad I didn't go crazy on the eval bar here on the Noterbet game, because after queen f6, I think we can see it's still a good battle. In fact, I'm going to reduce the evaluation. Might be promising for Noterbet, but I think a computer would still defend this kind of a position. We're going to go 0.5 for now. So I would say rook e1 just leads to a draw. Let me check my analysis real quick here. Okay. So did I get the rook and pawn ending correct? Yes, draw. Cool. Okay. So I think I got it right, that whole line. So is there anything else that we can see for Prague here against Sevian? You can play the card off of understanding for sure, Sushan, yeah. Let me think if there's any white line that would be really rough to handle without a bunch of prep. Nothing comes to mind, Sushan. I don't see where you'd be in where you'd have any real difficulties. Yeah, I think you can play the card just based on understanding and be fine. All right, let's see what Noterbek did. He just moved. Ceccarino, yeah. The most basic move. He doesn't really have the juice to sack a piece here, so I don't know that he had any choice other than this. But he did think for a long time about it. 14 minutes, so given that he spent 16.5 minutes on his previous move, not showing much confidence there. So now we would expect rook d to f1 is the next basic move. There could be something else going on here. That's a reason not to play the basico move, but it's what strikes me as normal. Basically, what white wants to do is defend the knight and then play h4 next. Let me ask myself one little question. He's played rook f1, and thank goodness he played it moderately quickly. Rook h8, h4, rook h8. I just want to see, can I win an exchange here? Or am I miscalculating something? Looks good. I win in exchange, right? If pawn takes pawn, there's queen g6, I think. It's a good 1200 level puzzle, I think. What do you think, chat? What rating would you give this puzzle, white to play? Queen h7, king h7, hg. And note that h takes g5 fails to queen g6, right? So there's like two moves you could look at. One of them doesn't work, one of them does. I was thinking 1200 level. No advice for me on this one? Yeah, I guess I'm thinking Skibix that basically half of 1200s should be able to find this one in a minute. In a minute or less, half of all 1200s should find it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to calibrate. The puzzle might not be so good because of the move knight g5. Might be a second move that works. Let's see. Knight g5, queen g6. Queen g6, king g6. No, that's fine. That's not as good as queen h7. Knight e5, queen e7. Looks okay. Yeah, I think it's about a 1200 puzzle. Exactly a pair. What I like about this puzzle is that there are a couple other options that are not as good. Okay, I like this puzzle. Okay, so in the game, he's played rook f1, b5 from Fabi, rushing for counterplay. So this rook h8 move probably doesn't help much because white just does what they want to do. But interestingly, he's not worried about knight e5, queen e7, or whatever else he's planning, and he just goes ahead with b5. Very hard to stop b4. You know, king b1 doesn't stop it. a3, a5 doesn't look like it stops it. So it's a savage move here. Interesting, right? Because you may recall that in this position here, the first line I suggested was king b1 for white when we first got into this game. My first suggestion, but Noterbeck went straight into complications. Now he's got to defend his pieces, and b5 happens before. If his king were on b1, he could just move his queen, right? And then b4, sorry. If his king were on b1, he could just move the queen somewhere, right? And then against b4, move the knight. So, oh, it's time for us to go. I'll be back in an hour, folks. So, yeah, let's raid the St. Louis stream so you can keep watching while I'm gone. They might ruin it for you with the space bar, so just fair warning for it, folks. The St. Louis Chess Club will almost surely show you the eval bars if you go there. So if you don't want to see the eval bars, don't go on this raid. We're going to go get a swim in, and then we'll be back for more chess. All right. All right. See you soon.